ultimately, especially like I'm a Kambo practitioner also, especially when I'm serving medicine in a ceremonial way, I am just holding the space. Like, I'm not doing anything. It's the medicine's job to do something. And I'm just like holding a clear, protected, beautiful, clean space so that the person can go through their experiences in a, like safe environment. And yeah, like, and I think it's with any practice, it's the ultimate goal. Like we're yes, like we're studying, yeah, we're studying to hold that beautiful space so that people can actually explore their own depth.
Satya Lights, welcome to the podcast.
So happy to be here, Tracy. Thank you so much for having me.
So, we have known each other for several years now. We crossed paths in the city of Angels, Los Angeles. It was
In a
teepee.
teepee.
in
Yeah.
what was for me, and I think for you too, just a pretty potent and transformational ceremony that really catalyzed a turn for us in both of our journeys. And it's just been so beautiful to witness and walk along beside you as a sister um,
Mm,
since that
mm.
faithful moment and in that time. And so I was thinking we would just begin by you going into a little bit of your backstory, your origin story, how you sort of started walking on the medicine path, as I call it sometimes, what drew you to this work, and go from there.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, well, the origin story goes way back. But if I were to find a starting point, to how it started, for me, the medicine path and being on this beauty way, walking the beauty way, like hopefully we can turn back and say that. Um, really, moving to City of Angels, like you said, on my own when I was 21, and not really understanding like that was a point where I was like operating from my default of like run away from, like not feeling. So it was with the intention of really studying, yet later in my journey I recognized like how everything like unfolded, and I ended up here on my own, like very young and courageously. So, so over the years of studying and working in really in escapism, like most of the time, there was a moment, you know, y- soon after I arrived to LA, where I would consider that as my awakening moment, as like, oh, like I, traveled all this, like way, only to end up with myself, and I didn't, like get rid of anything. I couldn't, and I'm still here. So that was a moment of, yet it wasn't like for me in, like we hear all this like transformational stories, and okay, like from that point, everything changed for me. For me, it was like really, um, incrementally changing, and I started getting into certain practices and breathwork, yoga, meditation to be exact. And then like that really opened up for me a community of conscious individuals and certain practices. And I was so curious, and curiosity for me was like one of the like intrinsic values, so that like I was studying the mind and the subconscious mind like when I was in like towards the end of the high school, and like when I started college and university. So um I was tapping into those realms, yet like not fully. I was curious, but like not fully going into it because of like all the pain that I was really feeling. So through yoga, meditation, and certain breathwork practices and workshops and a lot of reading and studying, I bit by bit started embodying, and like later I understood like I was releasing a lot of somatic like trauma from my body, not knowing what I was really releasing, which was the greatest part. And I remember a point in my journey, like from in the beginning, um, oh, like everybody's talking about their, like parental issues and, like background stories. Oh, like I think I have some like stuff with me. Maybe like if I do like couple of breathwork sessions, I can get rid of them. And how naive was that? Like, here I am 15 years later, still, like on the path of healing myself and learning about myself, and I like enjoying this journey. So that's how it started for me. And like really curiosity and deep studies in a lot of different realms.
All right. So sort of
Yeah.
a pivotal milestone was moving to Los Angeles at the young age of
Hmm.
21, but that's sort of a
Yeah.
potent kind of completion of a 7-year cycle, the age of 21,
Mm.
and then
Mm.
recognizing that, wow, everything I was running away from is actually carried deeply within me. And the only way that I'm going to potentially transform my experience of reality is through this kind of
Yeah.
this work.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, like it was a lot of closing of cycles and really recognizing, but also um like not really understanding how deep my like struggles and pains and all the traumas were going until really got into the plant medicine, like psychedelic journeys that opened up a whole um realm of, let's say rabbit hole, like, and it's going deep and also really rewarding in many ways.
So that does seem to be sort of a common theme that I hear with a lot of people's sort of
Mm.
healing journeys is just reaching a point where, you can't run away anymore, sometimes hitting a rock bottom of sorts, and then really feeling maybe the pain of staying the same starts to be more than, the pain of changing. But also
Changing.
being blissfully naive about how much gets uncovered in this process. And you brought into this other tool of plant medicines and psychedelics. So, what was your first journey with plant medicines or psychedelics, and sort of what was the setting, your intention going into that?
Well, I didn't have an intention other than curiosity, and I was 15 years old in Turkey. That's where I'm from. And bunch of like epic friends, really curious, bringing mushrooms from Amsterdam and trying it in the middle of Turkey. So it was a really fun experience where I decided I'm never doing that again at the end of the night because it was a very long journey. So that's how it started. And then years after, I was always really curious about like so many different psychedelics and in like LSD and mushrooms and also like party drugs, recreational drugs. So like really exploring my consciousness in that level, and also sometimes like really using it to escape like what's happening in the moment for me. So years later, deciding that actually, like this, I was going through a really interesting time in my life where everything was really the same. And I was diagnosed with ADHD and I was using, like prescription drugs for that. And that came to a point where I'm like, I can't really remember myself. Who am I? Like, it's just like physically really unhealthy because of like every day taking that specific thing. Yes, I am getting things done, looks like, but inside it was just like really drying experience for me. And like at the same time, simultaneously, really challenging relationship. And I said, I'm going to say yes to myself. And I actually went on a trip into the desert with a girlfriend of mine, then my yoga teacher, and my, we were walking the path of healing together then. And that was the experience where I decided a lot of things. And that was a really beautiful opening for me, where I came back and implemented and integrated all my learnings of that like journey immediately and started like really changing the trajectory of my life. And I think that was like me saying yes to myself and really choosing myself and really understanding, okay, like this, I have practices, but this gets to be really integrated in all aspects of life. And how it seemed to me then was like all my life was like in different segments and like and separated. And that used to be the common theme of my life, like really either this or this. Or do I do this? Am I here? Like am I in Turkey? Am I in the United States? So like really intentionally bringing everything together in the journey. So that was the beginning of it.
And so it was kind of that one. So you'd had these mind expanding experiences before, sort of more maybe recreationally, as people say, or really out of
Hmm.
curiosity. I think that's a lot of, I mean, that was initially my actual intention going into my first ayahuasca ceremony, even was just more
Yeah.
curiosity than anything, because I wasn't going in with, I was actually quite afraid of, I knew I was carrying a lot more pain and trauma, and I
Mm.
wasn't quite ready to unpack that yet without kind of just exploring that space and just seeing what it was about first. But it does sound like at that was a turning point where you maybe made the conscious decision to put this at the center of your life, whether you want to call it
Mm.
spirituality or healing work or what have you. But maybe consciously putting that at the center, as opposed to maybe putting your relationships or career or something at the center. No, spirituality is, or healing is this thing I do kind of on the side, but
Yeah.
there maybe came a point where that became kind of the center of the wheel, and everything else became spokes, would you say?
Exactly. Honestly, like I think my spirituality, I have been really spiritual like since really early ages. I had like interesting experiences where after in life, later in life growing up, like I actually closed that like connection. Yet, um spending a lot of time like in solitude, like I actually had that like beautiful connection. I was always really spiritual, always really interested in like meditating and all that, yet healing was not the center point. Like, so I think once healing and really understanding myself and learning, oh, like there's like this depth within me. Like I think plant med and psilocybin specifically back then opened that depth. Oh wow, like it's not only like one dimensional and it's not only this, it's not only that. And there's just like so many different ways. And
Yeah.
there's this beautiful depth that I can explore within myself, um, became the center point. So, like, really becoming that, you know, person who constantly like explores the depth, like instead of out, like I started like really turning
Mm.
inward.
So, in what ways did your sort of your everyday life start to, how did your everyday life sort of look before going into that phase? And then how did you integrate, now that you have this insight, this realization, this desire to
Mm.
shift your priorities? How then did that kind of manifest in your everyday life after that?
Mm. So, my everyday life, I think I like discipline, I thrive in discipline. And that's like really one of the things that I really love about myself, like from really early ages. And I take on something and I do it. And I think like this, like really masculine qualities that I, um, like just really almost mastered. Closing my heart though, like that's a different detail. It's like moving to a different country on my own as a woman, it's like it just became this like, okay, I say something and I keep my promise to myself first. So like really becoming a parent for myself. And my day to day was always started with like practices. Since I started yoga, I like first thing in the morning, I had to do yoga. That was my thing. So like my morning practices go way back, like into the beginning of like how I started. And that kind of built around like the entire meditation practice. My meditation, like regular meditation practice came later in life. And once that started, started becoming this like beautiful center point of my day. And it wasn't easy to actually cultivate that. Like with the busyness of life, and I am an entrepreneur. So like, like running a business as a woman, like, all of that. So to cultivate a meditation practice was not the easiest yet. Like I was like, okay, we're going to sit here even if we can't do anything and be successful, we're going to do that. And there were times that I was really hard on myself to get that down. And sometimes it was like a thing like I had to do. Like it wasn't because like I love to do. Like there were days like I was just forcing myself to do that. So like, a lot of like of softening right now into my practices, a lot of learnings as we sit, as we, cultivate that relationship within. So and right now, my practice became my life. Like really, like everything is a practice, everything is intentional, like everything is unfolding with like prayer and a certain, like breath and like really being really conscious and intending to be consciously present as much as I humanly can.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, while
Yeah.
allowing for the human
Uh-huh.
parts of ourselves. Okay, so it sounds like a morning
Mm.
practice, just starting with the consistency and the commitment, the devotion to a morning practice, which, as you say, is that sort of cultivating that more masculine side of our faculties, showing up when we maybe don't feel like showing up. That was the anchor point to your day and kind of the way that you it in a way, I think of it as really building the confidence
Mm.
and the self
Yeah.
accountability. Like if I set this intention and I show up and I do it and I'm doing that consistently over time,
Mhm.
that sort of feedback that we get to receive by showing up for ourselves in that way
Mm.
when nobody else is
Mm.
holding us accountable for that can really be a potent and beautiful way to um, then start to apply that to maybe other areas of our life where we're looking to manifest sometimes significant
Yeah.
change and also take on sometimes pretty big risks on ourselves as we maybe go against the flow of our prior conditioning or what
Mm.
society or our families expect of us. And so building that confidence is key, and a morning practice is a beautiful way to do that. What does your morning practice look like these days?
Well, it is very flexible these days. I think I have an hour, 15-minute meditation that I like really intend to keep. And if I don't do that, like, like my teacher comes into my dreams and like brings me into the practice. Yeah, a really silent practice and tuning into my heart is like the main practice. And then these days, what one of my teachers called the book ending, which is the really like connecting with the inner child, like first thing in the morning and like opening your heart before opening your eyes. And then really ending the day with that, like, okay, like, connecting with the inner child. So really bookending the day with like connection with that child is one of the works that like it's constantly coming up for me and like I like really love integrating into my mornings and the evenings. So connecting with the inner child and then like different physical practices depending on the days and these days I work with cacao, so like really sitting in silence and listening and opening my heart. So it's yeah, it's a dynamic, like, and you really understanding, like, as we learn ourselves and like, what do I need today? What does my body need today? So like, instead of like, so for me, learning to soften my gaze towards myself, like, which was the intentions like this year for me, instead of like that disciplined and, like forcing, okay, like, what do I need today? Like, how can I support myself today with my practices? Because now over the years, I have cultivated all these different ways in which that I can support myself, so that which one do I need from the toolbox today, right? Yeah. Mm.
Totally. And we are these dynamic creatures and always responding to our environment or a particular time in our life. And I too have softened in my practices. I did start out also really disciplined because I think that's what I was craving
Mhm.
at the time in my life. I call it monk mode, where when I was, felt like my external world, especially when I was in surgery training, just felt really chaotic, and I never knew what I was going to be facing in the day, which could be really intense. For me, my morning practices or just daily practices. I didn't always do it first thing in the morning because my days would sometimes start really early. But on a regular cadence, I was pretty strict about it because it felt like my refuge,
Mm.
my sort of inner sanctum at a time when I had less control over, my external circumstances. But really having a regular practice now, I think of it as bringing into
Mm.
balance. Like, where do I feel like I'm coming out of balance, and how can I use my practices to come into balance? And so that requires a varied
Mm.
toolkit. Sometimes we need the practices that cultivate the more masculine
Mm.
faculties, the discipline and the focus and the strength of will and that sort of thing. But then the other practices that allow us to soften into our more feminine faculties are also vital as well. And so I that really resonates with me how you talk about softening more now and adding some flexibility to
I
it.
Yeah, like flexibility is, I think, like it's really important. Like if like if you're actually like studying balance, like what is like what is, like you said, like what is it that is going to bring me into balance in my, being today? And so much happening, especially you have kids. Yeah, I mean, like you have a kid and you soon. And, like ups for you, like it's also like tuning into so many things at the same time. And for me, it's like, okay, cultivating and practicing also like really my work is to open and hold these spaces for people. So how can I bring myself into this place so that I can hold that space from that beautiful balance and open heart, and instead of like being like really strict with myself. And like you said, I think like it's in the beginning of our journeys to teach ourselves. I think that is a great way. And but right now that's, whatever is working for us. Like we are more we have more depth right now within ourselves and within our practices, I think.
Totally. And actually, you mentioned with your work these days, can you share a little bit more about you described yourself as an entrepreneur running a
Mm.
business. Can you share more about your work and what that looks like?
So my entrepreneurship is still continuing. Yeah, what has opened up for me within the years of like, especially after I started my healing journey and started opening my heart, and specifically after I started working with ayahuasca, um, the industry that I was working in, and I was designing textiles, and I have an MBA, and like I thrive, like I love business, and I like I love thinking business and all of that, and I love that part of me. Yet, when I was really studying with ayahuasca and went into deep, and like there was this point in my life, is this like where I want to be in the go, 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 go of life? And like constantly advertising in like sell, like all of that. Do I want to be there? And there was something else like really calling me um, into my studies. And I was really recognizing the deep desire to share my journey with people. And for me, there was like a lot of, you know, not really trusting myself and my channel and my voice and all of that, like back then. And I had to go back to school. So, in order for me to talk about like all the things that I have done, like, like or learned through philosophies of like Eastern philosophies or, like medicines or whatnot, like I had to had a background like in order to speak about it. Like that was what I, like was I believing, which supported me along the way. Like I love, um, you know, going back to school and being constantly a student. So I went back to school to learn so many different modalities then, and while continuing my business. So that was the foundation for me to really learn, like study and continue my healing journey, and then ultimately start my own practice of healing. So there's so many different modalities that I work with, and I started with clinical hypnotherapy, and then studying neurolinguistic programming and somatic trauma therapy, and I was like, I always forget, but like there's like, and I studying breath work, and for me, that was actually like the shadow part of me really oh, I'm not enough was playing out like in that realm. So, I'm not enough. Like just if I only know this, it's not going to be enough. So I need to learn all of this. So I went on this like binge studying where I had a point in my life where, huh, okay, this is what I'm doing. And maybe like recognizing that finally. So, and then that was a point where I started really integrating all my practices and also like really mastering it instead of like constantly chasing to learn something and from a place of like not feeling enough. And then actually going into those parts of me, recognizing, like myself and like really acknowledging myself, learning to trust myself in my medicine. It's a journey, like for all of us, I think, like really finding our voice and, like this is my calling, but am I good enough to do that? So, and, like I think this question is like so familiar to a lot of people, like, doing serving in this way.
So your work now primarily consists of coaching either in groups
Mm,
or one-on-one, both virtual and some
yeah.
in-person work. Some more sort of talking, conversational based, but also ceremonial and incorporating the modalities that you mentioned.
Hmm.
But I think you speak to something that really will resonate with potentially a lot of people in the audience, and I know me included. But for those of us who love being in the learning role, that we can fall prey to that, yeah, being an expression of
Mm,
unworthiness or inadequacy. And if I just get one more, in modern medicine, I see it sometimes with like, I just need one more fellowship or one more certification, and then I'll be able to speak
exactly.
to this.
Exactly.
And that can be a never-ending process. And I see people go into considerable debt in that process. And then at a certain point we get to really practice and master that which we
Yeah.
learned, which you just explained
Exactly.
so
To really
beautifully.
take a pause and look, because, like, I, even when I was continuing my studies and like really understanding that, like healing from a holistic perspective. So, right now, when I actually study something or like really willing to learn something, so right now, I'm still continuing studying, yet looking at, okay, like, what is the drive underneath? And also, how is it going to support my existing practice? And so like how is it going to support my clients, like if this area of like study. So because I think like to be a great teacher, and I'm not saying just like, but we get to be really great students, like, so that's really important, and we're going to be constantly students. So yeah, yeah, in my experience, like the clients that I attract usually like, like have certain experiences that I have actually worked through within myself. And then I get to hold space for those. And it's a really, really beautiful, um, rewarding experience to be able to walk the path and really like holding space, like, because ultimately, especially like I'm a combo practitioner also, especially when I'm serving medicine in a ceremonial way, I am just holding the space. Like I'm not doing anything. It's the medicine's job, like to do something. And I'm just like holding a clear, protected, beautiful, clean space so that the person can go through their experiences and in a, like safe environment. And yeah, like, and I think it's with any practice, it's the ultimate goal. Like we're yes, like we're studying, yeah, like we're studying to hold that like beautiful space so that people can actually explore their own depth, you know. So that's like one of the ways in which that I work in one-on-one and group settings, and like different programs, different trajectories that I take people. And yeah, that's how I work these days.
I've received so many questions
Mm,
about combo just
mm,
from friends or acquaintances. And I always mention you, my friend, who you're the person I'm closest with who works with combo. But can you share more about combo for somebody who's maybe new to learning about it
mm.
and really from a beginner's mind kind of perspective?
Yeah, it's a big conversation, but in a nutshell, Kambo is a frog by Medusa tricolor frog. It's a tree frog in the from the Amazons, and um, I work closely with Matse tribe, and there's the Awanovas. They also like really closely work with this medicine. Um, and there is 8 biopeptides that already exist in human body, that the secretion of this frog carries. So what we do, and usually people say, oh, this is a frog poison, we're poisoning ourselves. We're not actually really poisoning ourselves. We're actually activating these biopeptides for the healing purposes. And uh, but traditionally in the jungle, it is used for so many different reasons. I personally went and like actually experienced it with the matzes in the Peruvian Amazons, and like even little children, like for and during COVID, they actually mentioned they were using it almost daily, and to for the tribe members. And it is traditionally used before the hunting experiences. So what it does, what like what it says, it does. It's like it takes away the smell, like the sense of the human, so that like the animals won't actually smell the human, so they can actually like hunt better at night. And so that's one of the things it does. Yet, like it brings a lot of clarity to the mind. So there's a thing called like panea, like almost like procrastination, it would translate, or like the cloud in the mental cloud. So it cleanses that mental cloud. So it brings really beautiful, clear energy. So it works on the energetic level as well as it goes into the lymphatic system, and collects all the heavy metals and toxins. And then there's this whole process of like drinking certain amount of water, opening the we call it gates, the lymphatic system, with like the burning the first layer of the skin, and then opening the lymphatic system so that the medicine, the secretion can flow through the stream. And then we can have the experience, and it's a very fast activating experience, and it doesn't go more than like 25-30 minutes. And I'm not going to say it is the easiest experience, and it's not psychoactive. It definitely has like this amazing, beautiful spiritual aspect to it. Especially I started tapping into, like, when I started like having a, I don't know, like almost like 2-3 years after I started tapping into this like space in the experience, whereas everything is pitch quiet, and it's like, I love that space in Kambo. And it creates a lot of beautiful resets and cleaning and a clean energy. There's different ways in which that we apply, like, to the meridians, like the um, the Chinese medicine, like with the meridians, meridian therapy, or the chakra therapies. There's International Kambo Association. They have their certain ways in which I'm also trained with them. Like, it's closer to the Western way of doing things instead of the jungle. Jungle is like, they don't really even, secrete in the medicine. They put the frog sometimes in certain places in the jungle to the burns. So yeah, and the one of the ways in which that I'd like to also speak into when we're talking about Kambo, um, especially like when in Western societies, we find, when we find a solution about something, we go all the way. Oh, this detoxes us, like, and like, this is my responsibility as a Kambo practitioner to really speak into that. So it's like using the medicines for, like, very frequently, forgetting especially this is an animal, and also like being in a dualistic world, and thinking about, like, yes, tribes, we want to support them, we want to work with them, yet there's also the greed aspects of it, like, oh, like, there's this duality of energies where we are consuming more than we need, and that also brings a lot of danger to these species that are here to really support us in our evolutionary process. So, really understanding how it gets to be used. So for me, I specifically went to jungle to speak with the frog, which may sound really weird to people who are not like communicating interspecies, like within, like with different species. Yet, these animals have consciousnesses, and we tap into them. So I wanted to, really explore if I am the part of the problem or part of the solution by serving this medicine on a regular basis. And I went there, I meditated, I sat with the tribes people and learned their ways, and stayed with them. And then I finally got an opportunity to meet with the frog. And at a nighttime, these nocturnal animals. So um, it was a really significant moment as a practitioner, and then, like, as a person who's really connected to this frog. So my intention was like, okay, show me. So I actually witnessed how they're harvesting the medicine, which was, I'm not going to say like it was easy to watch. Yet they were, like, disturbing the frog from the nose so that the frog can have some discomfort, so that, like, the release the secretion so that we can have the medicine. Towards the end, they wash and they sing for these animals, and, like, it's a whole thing. It was really beautiful to really see, because in the Matses, Kambo is the only medicine they work with, so it's like a really important, part of their culture to sing and to take care of these animals and to listen to their songs at night. They're out. Or so, for me, in my inquiry, I asked the frog, and then I had a dream that night. And then the next day, walking out of the jungle 4 hours, I had a full on download about how to serve this medicine and how to take care of this medicine. So it is not like, yeah, let's come and come together and detox. It's more like a rite of passage moment, like really using the power, because there's like a lot of good power and strength and fire in this medicine, and using it like when necessary. So like I'm really being uh discerning when I'm actually serving combo with my clients, and where they are in their lives, and what's happening. So like there's like a whole inquiry and exploration when it comes to combo.
That was going to be my next question, which is sort of when do you recommend that somebody sit for a combo
Mm,
ceremony? What might they need be moving through or struggling with?
mm,
What obstacles or blockages? That sort of
yeah.
thing.
So there's different protocols, like with like even bigger like cancer patients. I did work with like a bigger stuff like that. There's whole protocols. Yet I believe, like really understanding the intention of the participant is really important. There's so many different ways in which that it can create beautiful cleaning, like maybe if, like cleaning the residues of like drug usage, um, or like for me emotionally, when I say rite of passage, it can be divorce or loss of a loved one. Really moving through this big kind of experiences, it may be really supportive. And you know single person has a different like way of holding certain emotions and processing different emotions. Really understanding and tuning and checking in with the medicine, I think, um I make a decision, really. And usually, since my intention and how I hold the medicine practice in my own practice, I know when people come to me, it's time to serve the medicine. So also like really listen to like their stories, where they are within themselves. And it's usually from one point to another. And yeah, it's I'm not going to say it's a really easy process. And if people are coming to that process, they may, like maybe going through something significant.
Mm, yeah, it's a physically demanding medicine from what I hear. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't sat with it myself
Uh-huh.
yet somehow. I know there will be a, no, a moment in the
Mm,
future with you and me, I know. Um, and so it's not a decision to take lightly. Of course, I would say that with any
mhm.
sort of psychedelic or any of these plant or animal fungi medicines. And so and and so typically people are moving through a threshold of sorts or a transition, it
Exactly.
sounds like. And I would say the same thing with psilocybin. It's a wonderful medicine for support in that way, because in these transitional moments there can be a lot of clouding with the ego, and these medicines have a beautiful way of clearing
Mhm.
that and bringing a clarity that we are really seeking in those moments. And I remember hearing a woman speak on that same property where we met, over a Mother's Day
Mm.
celebration, and she was a combo practitioner who used it with women who were crossing the maiden to mother
I
threshold,
was just gonna
and
say,
describing
yeah.
how it can be a beautiful medicine for preparing a woman before childbirth, because there are these aspects, like with so many of these medicines, of a surrendering to the really strong physical sensations that can
Mm.
arise.
Kambo
Yeah,
also is
and
a really beautiful medicine for womb cleaning and womb healing. And in
mm,
Turkey specifically, actually last year, like in my motherland, like I did a lot of womb healing, and like it was just like unfolding itself. So really witnessing, and in the tribes, women hold this wisdom and they don't really actually share. So like to before getting ready to hold a child. Oh, and also like sometimes it's for abortion they use combo. So there's a specific way of serving, and they're not really sharing with like the Westerners, but they hold a certain wisdom and way of using this medicine to work in that way.
that is so
Mm.
fascinating. And That's how a lot of that's how medicine was practiced for millennia, was by the women in the
Mm,
village. And yeah, there is so much that we don't know or have lost and that we are
mm,
reclaiming in the process of reintegrating these medicines into our societies, and in particular in Western societies,
mm,
in modern societies. And I find it endlessly fascinating, and I can totally see how it could be supportive and on many different levels. You know, you mentioned it's not just the physical, but the mental and the
mhm.
emotional and the spiritual level. This medicine taps into the energetic
Yeah.
level, taps into all of that. Um, I wanted to switch gears a bit because what came to me as you're speaking
Mhm,
too, I was remembering fasting being a major modality that you practice with yourself.
mhm.
And I remember you sharing with me, one of the days we were together in that little house, you were sharing a fast that you were about to embark on. I think it was a pretty long water fast. I can't remember exactly how many days. It was up
It was
there.
16 days.
You were going for it.
I remember that. That was actually my first water fast, and the most successful, I would say. And 16 days was not the water fast. So, like, how I actually organized. First of all, I studied a little bit and read an amazing book, like to really protect myself and like my body, and also like support myself, like emotionally, spiritually, physically, and also knowing what's happening in my body on certain days. And we didn't have like fasting apps that then, like that shows, oh, we're in ketosis and this is what's happening in your body right now. We didn't have those. And so I was preparing myself like 3 days with juice fasting, like green juice, and then went into the 10-day water fast, and then really easing into the after the water fast again with juice and soups, and then really going into like solid and bit by bit introducing. So it's a whole process, and usually actually with the fasting it's the most important part, not the fasting part, but like really reintegrating food into our bodies is the most important. And I learned it the hard way.
Can you share sort of the inspiration
Mm,
for the fast? And then, yeah, what were some of the insights you
mm,
had? Like, how did that change your relationship to your body
hmm.
and with
It's
food?
interesting that this is coming up right now because I'm also really getting ready to do a long water fast. So, how did it come to like, I did not know anybody really water fasting around me then. Yet it came to me in a meditation. And then after the meditation, I was listening to a channeling, a teaching, and then they were talking about this like fasting and like and then I'm like, is this a message? Like, is this what I'm receiving? And also like it sounded really uncomfortable. Like, what does that mean? And like like to not eat like for all these days. Like I'm in a lot of different cultures studying like fasting is really part of the practices in so many different ways. So I started really researching. I actually saw like, since right after it started being in my field, I saw like really close friends. They were uh, in water fast as a couple and sharing their experiences. So I actually tuned into it and then got the book that I can recommend to anybody who's interested, and then really tuned into it and prepared myself. And intuitively, I knew this was the right decision for me in that moment and for my body. Like that was it. And what I learned, what I learned is like there's about myself and in my own personal relationship with food and how I use food to numb also because there's so many ways in which I worked with so many different addictions, nicotine addiction and like drinking alcohol and being addicted to. like anything, it's like that, like, instead of feeling. So like, and then like in my healing journey, I didn't realize I was using food as that. So that was my first, like being hungry and craving is different things. And I did not know that like until. So, and in certain lineages, there's like certain diets and you take out certain things and then you use only one thing. So like basically just drinking beautiful spring water, I was really like tuning into the consciousness of water, the element of water, and the water became like this beautiful teacher. And, like when we spend 80% of our life force energy on a daily basis to digesting food, and when we don't have anything to digest in the body, there's all this energy. And there's nothing to do. Like you're not eating, you're not doing anything. You're like, you can't go out to a restaurant to meet with a friend or anything. It's like, okay, what do you do? So I started like deepening my meditation practices. I remember like sitting 4 hours a day, like for a meditation, like really exploring. So it's been an interesting journey, and like, like on the physical level that like a lot happens, and then like the fat around our organs, and like really there's this certain level of vibrancy that you tap into when we take out the food in our diets. And I did like several after that. Every single experience is different, almost like an ayahuasca ceremony. You can never know like what's going to come up. And also there's all this discomfort with the craving and, like all the mental chatter. You're like you and your mind and, like alone. Like, what do you do? So it's like a really beautiful opportunity to get to know ourselves on a deeper level when we go on a journey like that. And yes, we were talking about it, but like just like the plant medicines and this kind of stuff is not like for everybody, and we need to be really careful like going into this experiences, I want to say.
I was just about
Yeah.
to add, I mean, that caveat. And just to clarify, a water fast is where you're not eating any food,
Just
you're still
drinking
drinking
water.
water
Yeah.
though. And yes, this is not for it's very specific where you are in your
Yeah.
physical health journey too. And of course, if you have any history of any sort of eating disorders, which honestly, I would argue the vast majority of young women, at least in our generation, when I speak to my friends, like the relationship with food is so
Hmm.
distorted in modern life, and we're separated from the way we grow our food, and a lot of people don't even cook their own food anymore. We've undergone this, industrial revolution in our food system, along with every other aspect of our lives. And so, yeah, it's not fasting is not a practice to enter into lightly. But on the other, what can be gleaned in that process, I would argue you potentially would not be able to glean in any other way. That I myself, before I started having children, so I would say, if you're a woman who is looking to enter into your childbearing years, fasting is not something that you'd maybe want to be practicing with right
Mm.
now, because it can alter your hormonal cycles. And obviously, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, you don't want to be engaging with it. But before that time of my life, I was, Mike and I would do water fast, but for 24 hours, 28 hours at a time, just experimenting with it. And I feel like I just got just a taste of what you're describing, and I'm very intrigued by it. But it did, first of all, the way that your other senses can come online, like your sense of smell, or, just your sense of touch, like all of that can become heightened when you take away the sensation of taste when you're
Hmm.
constantly
Hmm.
eating all of the time. So that was fascinating to experience, but also when you first start in reintroducing foods, which I want to ask you more about, because it sounds like you learned something though in an interesting way after that. But that first taste of food after going without it is elevated, heightened, just magnificent in a way that you never appreciated
Yeah.
before. And so, and then also just the way that maybe foods that you, richer foods or processed foods, maybe that you would find yourself sort of subconsciously or unconsciously reaching for because trying to numb or distract
Mhm.
or some other, there's engaging with the food in a way outside of just purely nourishing your body. That becomes glaringly
That
obvious.
is like, like that's on your face. And, every time it gets really like, especially my first practice, every time it got really uncomfortable, I would just like find myself in the front of the refrigerator. I'm like, okay, what am I doing here? And, it's like really subconsciously as we do all these things. And, like when things get challenging a little bit, or we're in our minds. And then this kind of practices, it was just like so beautifully, like on my face. And I actually it really worked with it. And um, the introducing food part is like really exciting, actually. So I think my last one, this actually like the beginning of this year, like I entered the 2023 in a fast, actually. So, but this was the first year I actually started eating um like bone broth, so like really nourishing stuff, so I could totally feel my body receiving the nourishment. So really like also understanding how body works and how we receive and how it feels, how good stuff feels in the body when, like after a long time of not eating and not consuming anything, becomes really obvious for us, and it's a really big learning experience.
Yeah, food actually carries a vibration energy component
Hmm.
too. It's not just about the calories or the, food as fuel, or even just, food as medicine, but also just the way that it can make us feel and we
Hmm.
channel the energy of the food. And I think that's so lost in our modern day cultures. And fasting is just a wonderful tool to work with under guidance. And then you
Exactly.
mentioned a book. Do you remember the title of it? If not, I can
We can
include it
link
in the
it.
show
It's a
notes.
green book, I
Yeah.
know, but no, yeah, it's not on top of my
Okay,
head.
we'll look it up and include it in the show notes. Beautiful. So, where are you based now? Is there a way for people to work with you now? What's the best way to reach out
Mm.
to you?
So satyalights.com and at Satya Lights on Instagram. I think Instagram is the only social media platform that I use on a regular basis. And I do create a lot of content that is like present with me and with my contemplations and with my clients in the space. And like, like I really tune into those energies and then create content with them. And right now, currently, I'm actually opening a 3-month container with women. It's called I Am That Woman. And it is like, and you're very familiar with the practice. So it's going to be a beautiful sisterhood and healing and embodiment, feminine embodiment container that really excites me. That's my highest excitement in this moment. And and then I continue my one-on-one work with people. It's like really depending on the, like the cases and circumstances, like there's we build specific programs for specific, like needs. So yeah, like these are the ways in which to work with me one-on-one in like this new upcoming group program. And I also have an online community. It's called the Portal. So we do create content and we have meetings, and it's like really cultivating community in this day and age. Yes, it is online, but we're on the way.
Yeah, I participated in one of your group online cohorts. I think it was about 6 weeks
Yes.
long. I am that. And it was such an amazing experience for me. It was beautiful. You incorporated the various modalities, even just like hypnotherapy, opening our heart, various practices, and then sharing in the space. And after that process, I I was like, I need to work with this one-on-one because I was moving through a very big transition period where in my work and transitioning out of my role in conventional
Mm.
medicine as a pediatric orthopedic surgeon. And, both you and I were exploring psychedelic medicines for all of these years. And I was getting to a point where, I was, getting to a fork in the road, it felt like to me. And I had a lot of confusion and was craving a lot of clarity. And it was amazing. We didn't do combos together, but even just working one on one in that virtual container where we would meet for an hour and a half or 2 hours every other week, um, I was able to really open up the clarity for myself about which direction my heart was calling
And
me
here we
to go
are.
in.
I'm so happy
Yes,
to be here with
this
you.
podcast
Oh,
manifested
we
because
talked
of
about this. We manifested that. I remember, and even before I came into this, like the recording, it's like, I remember where we first, like where I actually first intuited this was going to happen, and here we are. It's happening. Right now, I'm in LA, but then, like when we were having this conversation, I was in Turkey. Yeah.
and it really opened up my eyes to the possibilities of how potent and deep work can be, even just virtually in that kind of
Mm.
container. And the support you provided me over that, we created a 6-month container working together. And it was the best investment I could have ever
Thank
made.
you.
And I'm constant, whenever people are reaching out to me with similar, working through similar things, I do recommend you. But even just if you can drop into the portal community or another group container, it's just so I can't recommend working with you
Mm.
enough.
Thank you.
And it really has been, yeah, an honor and a privilege. And I'm so grateful that you share your medicine with the world, the way that you've really stepped up to share, and the consistency with which you show up. That was what was so apparent to me and really aspirational, because it's so clear that you have done and continue to do the work on yourself. And I am always saying, for anybody who's looking to move into facilitator work, that the number one most important thing is
Yeah.
to do your own work.
Yeah.
And it's so clear that you do that. And yeah, even just the concept of coaching, I think, can be relatively foreign for a lot of people like myself who are working in healthcare, or physicians or healthcare professionals. But there really is nothing like having that person to hold you in that particular space. And yeah, I can't recommend it highly enough
Yeah.
for people.
And I want to like really add into that because, like no matter how far we go into our explorations of self, there's like a blind spot. And when we're working with someone, the other person is really holding that mirror to us, like the clear reflection. That's the reason it's really important. Like who we are working with, are these people really doing their work so that they can actually be a clear mirror and hold that for me, hold that space for me. So like, if anyone listening is like considering going into coaching and all that, like there's like you guys should ask questions like, what is this person actually, how do they live their lives? And, you know, um, yeah. And then from that place, like you can discern if they can, like there's this like alignment. Like if there's that alignment, trust yourself also. Yeah.
Totally. It really is a decision that's made off of a feeling,
Mm.
I believe. And what's beautiful about a platform like Instagram or any of these other kind of social media sites, I believe, is that you can get to know someone by seeing how they share. And if you'll just resonate with a particular person in a way that is almost on a soul
Yeah.
level. And, you're meant to work with this person at this particular point in your life, and you'll feel the calling, the pull to do that. And that's for me how it's unfolded when we met in Los Angeles and we were working with our coaches there, and then when I worked with you. And so that's really how the discernment piece is key.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I will share your Instagram handle, your website, and yeah, keep well, this needs to be something that we do again at some point in the
Oh,
future. We'll reconnect because the medicine you share is just so beautiful.
I'd love.
And I just want to thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much for having me, Tracy.
Hello, beautiful people. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do hit that subscribe button. And as always, leaving a like or a comment, sharing or leaving a review. All of that is so, so appreciated as we help to grow the podcast. And if you are interested in learning more about my work as a psilocybin facilitator and integrative wellness physician, please do visit my website at www.eleusiahealth.com. That's Eleusia, ELEUSIA, health.com.